Any changes? Any discussion? Do I have a motion to accept?
I'll accept.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next up is the Conservation Commission budget, which we tabled last week. Would you like to say something, Jim?
I was just more than happy to be on this side of the table because years ago I was on that side and I know what your job is like. So I'm more than willing to just answer any questions that anybody might have.
I think the one question we had was the office expenses is almost double. Can you tell us what that's gonna go? Do you have something in mind?
Yes, first of all, although it says office expenses, in the last couple of budgets we've been putting, or the town has been putting a whole bunch of things that aren't really office related in there. Like, the forestry plan that has just arrived on my desk today and stuff. So the major increase in that is for the Merriam Woods survey. The property has not been surveyed since 1980, when it was donated to the town in 81. And so that means that you're not really sure where you are when you're walking the lines around. Many of the markers are still there, but there are at least two corners that are very difficult to find. We can't even find the one that abuts the National Forest line. And so it's been recommended by the foresters that we have employed to give us a forestry plan, that we need to know where the lines are, because the last thing you want to do is to cut a tree that's on the wrong side of the property line.
Mhm.
There are some indications that it might not be as difficult as possible as some places to survey, but it hasn't been done in such a long time. Most of the markings that we are getting are based on what an abutter has put up his property line and shown that. So the finding a surveyor these days is not easy. We sent out a couple of requests, only heard back from one, and it's the one that the forester recommended. He was giving us an estimate of $5,000 for the preliminary work, and then $10,000 to do all the lines and things. The advantage of that in this day and age, they have these great machines that can get a very exact border. Whereas before they had somebody walking through the woods and falling in a hole and then getting up and being a little bit off. So that's the major increase, the 15,000 for that.
Anybody else?
Talks about game cameras.
Last, I'm gonna back up a little bit. I don't know how much you know about the Merriam Woods property, but for many, many years, it was just this wonderful place where people went and ran their dogs, and it was used for hunting and everything else. And then during COVID, it became a primary destination for rock climbing, and it's some of the best rock climbing in the area. And very, like 3 years ago, I guess, it became apparent that the rock climbing community had decided that this was public land and that they were going to go in, and they built trails and they put signs up and they left climbing equipment and everything else. And when they were informed that it was property owned by the town of Woodstock and managed by the Conservation Commission, they went, "Oh, we didn't know that." So there was a lot of discussion at the beginning, and the town voted 3 years ago not to remove the climbing trails that were in existence, that climbing routes. Gotta get this right. There are areas, and in each area there's a different routes to get to the top. We now have a handle on how many are existing right now. It's over 100 routes, and I can't remember how many areas. I would have to look back at the report. And we wanted to see how the land was being used. So we purchased game cameras last year and they were sent out by our president Samantha Bobo Woodward. And we have gotten some amazing shots of 12-point bucks, and we're not even sure one thing might be a Canadian lynx. We've sent it into the Fish and Game to see whether Canada lynx is what's on our camera. But we found that there's probably 120 to 150 visits during our monitoring period, which is 3 to 4 weeks. And that 70+% of that are climbers going in there. And the rest of it are people who are walking their dogs or just hiking and bird watching and things like that. So we've done a very lot of work in the last 2 years to develop a management plan that meets the requirements of the warranty deed that Miriam's left the town with. Back in 1980, they didn't foresee so many things, so there's lots of things we can't do. First of all, we can't control any recreational use. We can't say, no, you can't do that. If it's recreation, it's allowed. But we are also charged to manage the property for agricultural and forestry. And that is, we've done a lot of surveying, they're called cruises, with Forrester going through. He's identified the species. I can't give you any more information on the report because, like I said, I just got it this afternoon. But it's a 70-page plan, which includes 10-year things, things that we would do in the next 5 years to improve the crop of trees, and then things that would happen in 10 years to do a harvest there. That's a long way of saying we have those trail cameras so that we can monitor how the property is being used.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Which meeting one?
I'm going to Historical Society.
Oh, that's
in
one, yeah.
Upper Pemigewasset.
I thought they were closed. Alright, I thought they closed down the building.
It's, they can open up the church for one night. I think Mike Dickerman's giving a lecture,
Oh,
so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, yeah, for all you do. Thank you.
Next up is the executive budget.
okay. So we have 53 weeks of payroll. We have done a wage adjustment. And we have somebody that may be looking at retirement next year. Or not next year, into the beginning, right at the beginning of 2026 possibly. So we have appropriated money to try and, depending on the outcome, to try and get somebody in here to maybe train ahead of time. And we don't know what that looks like, so we have just,
Who goes in under staff payroll?
it's Kathy, myself, and Cheryl.
Okay.
Huh?
The bloodline.
People who know everything.
And is that part of Kathy, right?
It's part of Kathy, yep.
Yes, okay.
Yep, she's in the, she has a son that goes to the planning board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Most of it's with me though.
But does the payroll include like benefits?
No,
That's on a separate budget.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, next up, town clerk.
this is actually down because of elections. We should have, well, we only have one election next year, however, their law passed that is going to require us to have a handicap accessible voting booth even at school and town elections. We think they're going to allow us to use theirs for this town election coming up because we are mandated. But we don't have the final word for that, so we don't even have a cost, so I have carried what I think it might cost, just in case we have to buy it and just in case it's not funded by a grant. So that's why the election expense is a little higher for a one election year. Hopefully, we do know it will either be purchased by grant or by the town in at least by 2026. We will only be able to loan theirs for 2025 is from what I'm hearing now. If that's the case, and then we're gonna have to be responsible for programming. It's a whole thing. Which isn't too bad for us at town. I don't know what that's gonna look like for the school, especially district school, but
What is a handicap
Exactly.
accessible?
it's that.
I was thinking a
well,
stall, like
It's
a,
that
yeah.
big stall when you go in and there's a printer and there's a certain keyboard and there's a headset.
Oh,
And
so it's
So
not
like-
wide enough
like
for a
a-
wheelchair and
Right.
just go do
Oh,
that.
no,
it's like
exactly.
fully ADA
Full
compliant.
ADA.
full ADA, an
Okay.
iPad and a docking station and,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm not sure exactly. I just know the law passed and I need to be prepared for whatever might be thrown our way. Other than that, the budget's down $34,000.
Okay, any other questions? Next up, tax collector.
Out of order. That's just really postage, everything else, is the same. I think they need to cover some of the postage this year.
Any other questions? Next up, legal.
Oh, do you guys not have a 4150 trust fund one
We have,
with maintenance contracts or
4150 says tax collector.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna come back to that. We're gonna make you copies so you can look at what I'm looking at, cause that's a big one.
Okay.
We'll just get through this. I must have missed loading that. It's not in the tax collector?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
No, all right, I'll just make copies after, okay. Legal is the same.
do we end up using that?
Legal, oh, sometimes,
Yeah,
Some years we get very close, some years we do okay. This year we're doing okay, knock on
It
something.
goes back into the general fund sometime, it comes off for tax review.
Okay, next up, town building.
Ultimately, it's down $1,000 and it's just playing around with the heating, lighting and where everything was kind of structured. Some things went up, some things went down.
and that is not here, that's
Yep.
the.
Oh, that's the whole town.
It's,
Hold it.
okay,
It's the whole, every
like
department.
town buildings.
Town-wide,
Okay,
except for streetlights, that's the only thing that's not on here.
But the maintenance garage, that whole
Everything,
building
yep.
down there, the town, this one.
Yep. It's the parks, it's the bridge lights, it's the speed sign, it's all of that.
okay, so like buildings and grounds,
Yes, I guess, yeah.
okay.
Minus the cemetery.
And streetlights.
And the streetlights, yeah, for some reason they keep those separate, I don't know.
Awfully expensive.
They are very expensive.
Yeah.
The capital reserve, is that for like if a building needed a new roof or something like
Right.
that?
Yeah,
Do you know how much is in there?
roughly 200,000, I think. That's also where the money goes. And so as we're doing building maintenance and like right now, the fire department's gonna be having some stuff, or if a furnace let go, it would come from there, but also money's being appropriated into that to do a study for this building. To find out the best use of it, space use, architectural. So,
Space use, you don't have any unused space in your office.
well, are we using our space wisely? What are our options? So we're saving for that. While also, and if we do have to do work, there's money being put away for that. as well as maintenance each year.
Any other questions? Next up is insurance.
Oh, I do have it here. We have 279,000. Future planning in the town office, but, the outside schedule for this year is ceilings at the firehouse, outside siding, and some walls and
Cosmetic work.
painting.
And we've
Sorry.
talked about some flooring out here
Yes,
and painting the walls out here as well.
yes, that is on there too.
Insurance, I'm just assuming that's a new quote.
Yep, up 11%, and that's all of our liability for the townwide.
You know what, though, that's not.
That's not
not
bad.
not terrible.
No.
Mine went up 60%, so.
So, yeah, and we're fortunate there, and we're actually really fortunate with our healthcare too. Yeah,
Yeah, that's been another.
ours is, not, I mean, the last couple of years, everybody's coming way higher than. And then they play this game, the towns play these games where they're swapping back and forth, and they're trying to find, they ultimately always end back up with health trust. Well, then they can't get their plans, or they come in at a different, if they just stayed and just wrote it out, it always evens itself out with health. Or you get like a contribution holiday back from them someday, sometimes. All right,
Next up, advertising.
that's the chamber, and the chamber has like restructured their membership rates, and we just feel like we come in under a different category now for what we use them for, so that's that.
Next up, contingency.
So the contingencies are, this year is, contingencies are always unanticipated expenditures. We're required to carry them by law, so if you have unpredicted risks so they're asking us because of the way the road, we always stated $1,000, well, that's not realistic anymore. So we upped it a little bit this year, you will probably see it go up a little bit next year. And then the outlay is, we have increased for this year because this is our reval year. So we will probably, the projection for our assessed values, we could see 2 times what we are now, or maybe even higher. So we feel like we might end up at the BTLA or in court for some of them. So we need to have some, that would be for maintenance and stuff. Refunds typically are just an in and out, they can make me carry a line item.
Any other questions? Next up, streetlights.
That kind of is what it is. That's just all over town.
And that's just the operating cost of them? Or is it
Just the
repair?
electric bill.
That's the electric bill?
Mhm.
Now, do we pay for the ones on the state highway too?
Any of them in Woodstock, yeah.
Any other questions? Next up, economic development.
That's the town,
Oh,
that's the common. It's the Christmas trees, it's the flowers in the buckets, it's everything Karen O'Rourke does all summer and decorating the bridge and stuff like that.
Next up, principal and interest long-term.
So that is your fire truck. If you look at your budget, you will see that it looks like we're overspent right now. That's just because the highway garage payment is in there. At the end of the year, we will move that and pull that from the capital reserve fund from the sale of the old highway garage. So that's the new one. And give me 1 second, I'm gonna go make a copy of this and then I'll upload it later. Because this is a doozy. Sorry.
I have a question that I should have asked Jim before we left, but it just occurred to me. What if we say no to that 15 grand? I mean, sounds like they've already started the survey.
They have gotten an estimate for the survey and they've identified some of the posts, there's some of the
Okay.
corners, but there's.
Well, what if the
questions
budget
about-
committee says, no, we don't think so, and the town votes, well, actually, they didn't, it's not a specific line.
It's not a
item we're
line
voting
item, it
on.
goes in as a lump, it'll go in as a lump sum as
Yeah.
conservation commission.
So if we say no, then
It'll go as the selectmen approved and the
budget
Budget
committee,
budget committee
opposes.
didn't,
and then
and then it
they'll
can
end
be,
up getting it probably anyway, because it's just in the general fund anyway.
yeah.
Okay.
While we're waiting for her to come back, so when we come back on the fourth. We used to do ambulance, fire and police in the same. We're gonna do ambulance, at the joint meeting in January collectively with both Lincoln and Woodstock so that. The ambulance doesn't have to come in front of both budget committees, both board of selectmen's, so they'll do all of us at the same time, on the same day.
Sounds to me.
So, and we'll get, the idea is we'll get a budget that looks very similar to how ours are broken out. So it'll show us payroll, it'll show us operating expenses, it'll show X, Y, Z, so that it's very similar. You're looking at apples to apples to like what we look at, or what we require our police department and fire departments to submit.
Which we don't usually get that.
Right, so,
We used to
We've
get a
never
lump
gotten
sum.
it, that's
right,
right,
right.
it was just a lump sum, was
Right.
never broken out as
Right.
to what you were
So
getting.
this is to provide, better transparency for everybody.
So will we see it before that?
Yes, yep, we should. We'll reach out to the chief and just remind him to try to get it out a week before, so folks have a chance to look it over and then.
So when we meet with Lincoln, like, do we vote then and there? Okay,
We
So-
do, just as we do here, we'll review it
Discussion.
and then have discussion. They'll be able to answer questions where we can all have the same, hear the same answers.
perfect.
If
Yeah.
you go up to your main agenda and refresh, it should be right at the, way at the bottom. You click it forward. Yeah, is it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
What number is that? What is it called?
Principal
4150.
4150 financial.
Oh,
You'll have to
financial
load it again. Go to the home, and go to meetings,
Oh.
and then hit, and then if you go to the bottom, it's probably whited out.
Did you get it, Clay? You have to reload it like you do when you first.
Under
load it.
adjournment,
My most important thing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, so. As with anything, most of our maintenance contracts are projected to go up, anywhere from 8 to 10%. But we will also be doing a full software conversion. And while we are doing that, we have to carry 2 maintenance contracts. One from the old one and one from the new one as we get started. So, yeah, we plan to maybe piecemeal it, but we found out right before town meeting last year that they weren't going to be supporting us and we had to really, because we planned to appropriate over a couple years. That they were just, was going on pretty much not gonna be supported. And this other company kind of give us through, and so we will start right at the end of actually this year. And it will be a townwide software conversion. Every one of our programs, so it's gonna be huge. So that's why it's up. And that's why you're not seeing anything under the digital filing and electronic filing, because we won't be able to, so we will revisit that next year. We're gonna take a break from that and focus on the programs. So that being said, everything that you saw from the last meeting to this meeting, all the budgets, they're up 58,561, which is pretty much my software. Other than that, the budgets from the last two nights would have offset me, we would have been level funded.
So this is all
The
your
software's
fault.
definitely,
Huh.
the software's definitely needed, because we've been working with DOS since,
Really?
Oh, yes, I still do DOS prompts.
Really?
I do.
yeah, so it's time to
Oh, wow.
make the investment and.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
I mean, the tax one is a little more, we have not changed accounting software since I have been here
Really?
in 19 years.
Wow.
Our tax software, we have updated, but again, it was with that company that's. And the software that we're moving to is, cloud-based, and our auditors will have live access to it, they're watching our every move, it's amazing what they'll be able to do, they love this software, it's highly recommended by them.
What's the name?
Which is helpful.
MTS. It's not it's a municipal software, it's not a software you'll find out there in the.
Well, if you're still doing DOS prompts, then it's not very security minded.
It is because of our firewalls. And that's part of it too, so part of that is that our two firewalls are due to be replaced. And that's part of our computer contract that we have out. So that is part of that money too. Yeah, it's hard to get through our firewall to access anything, so you are protected with what we do. And then the police have a whole other firewall, because our two firewalls can't connect, the auditors actually audit our cybersecurity and what we have in place for it. That's all I got right now.
Any other questions, discussion? Do you have a motion to adjourn? Do you have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The meeting has been adjourned at 5:59.
Happy Thanksgiving.